Welcome to the Wisdom of Show. I'm your host, Simon Bowen, and every week I'm speaking to the world's greatest leaders, thinkers, and entrepreneurs about complex issues and impactful leadership. Join us in the Renaissance of Wisdom. Well, welcome to the Wisdom of, and my guest today is Kristina Karlsson, who's the founder of Kikki K, a stationery business with a real difference that she founded in Australia and took nationwide to well over 100 stores. I'll get into the background in a minute, but we're talking to business leaders that have had broad experience at all levels and all levels of success in business, because we live in an increasingly complex world, a lot of competing pressures, political, social, economic drama going on all over the world sometimes. And if business is supposed to be one of the most powerful forces for good on the planet, it's worth us taking some time to understand how business leaders that lead from wisdom actually think about things, unpack things. What are the lessons they've learned? And so I really want to welcome you, Kristina. I've got to declare my hand. We spent time on a ship together going to Antarctica, so we know each other. And we had the opportunity to have some pretty interesting conversations. And of course, for me, a part of the surprise in that was, finding out more about the Kikki K story, including, basically having the business taken away from you in many respects, because you drove it into a pretty significant business. But let's get the story first. How you kind of came to Australia. Like, what you said to me, I wasn't a stationer, I wasn't into stationery. Why did you even think about starting a stationery business?
Well, first, thank you so much for having me. And wow, Antarctica was unbelievable. And in terms of the experience, but also the incredible people that we met, including me meeting you. So thank you. But I started my journey on a farm in Sweden, and then I met my partner, Paul, in a ski resort in Austria, and that brought me to Australia. And when I came to Australia, I was not sure what to do with my life, and I was complaining and whinging quite a bit. So I woke up my partner Paul, I think for the fifth time that night, saying, "What am I going to do with my life?" And I had, a really privileged upbringing on a farm, but always wanted to see the world, and I did that. But I was kind of ready to do something more proper versus traveling the world. And Paul, he encouraged me to write down some dreams on paper. And I wrote down that I wanted to drive to work every single day and loving it. I wanted to have a business on my own. And I wanted to have a connection with my country, Sweden, and then work with Swedish design. And I wanted to make $500 a week. That was my list of dreams. And then when I looked at that list, later, not that night, but later, I thought, if I'm going to have my own business one day, I really want to have a beautiful home office, because I'm a person who loves interior. I love productivity, and I like to be inspired. So I thought I'd go out and buy some products. Could not find anything, in my opinion, that was well designed, good quality, or something inspiring. So I then looked at that and thought, that's my opportunity. And that's how my first business, Kikki K, started.
So let's talk about Kikki K for a moment, because you just throw that out there, like, that's how my first business, Kikki K, started. So clients in over 150 countries, I think 120
stores, yep.
Stores in Australia, and and a casual $650 million in revenue at its peak, if I've got that correct.
Yeah.
But of course, the other side of that story is obviously business is what it is, and business has ups and downs, and you had a real opportunity to sell this just prior to COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then COVID came.
Yeah.
And that didn't pan out. So, the other side of the story for everybody to realize is that it's not always about the success and getting there. It's about what you do after, something's potentially taken away from you through a global pandemic that you didn't really have a whole lot of control over.
No.
So the other side of that story then, was what in terms of the story?
Yeah, it's a bit of a long story, but to make it quite short, is basically in 2016, we had someone knocking on our door to buy us, and we just joined forces with a private equity firm, so we were not interested at that time, and we kept saying no, but the the deal just became better, and we started looking into it. And as we were kind of opening, we were a global business. We were in 5 countries, and in terms of physical stores, but also then sold globally online.
Mm.
And we had a lot of challenges during this time. We had Brexit in the UK. We had stores in the UK. We had stores in Hong Kong with all the issues there. We had bushfires in Australia. And retail is a challenging business as it is, with inventory all over the world. And it's just it wasn't an easy business for sure. And then we had a couple of CEOs that didn't work out. So there was a lot of challenges for sure. But the big challenge was that we were just about to sell. The term sheet was signed and we were ready to sell, and I was still going to be part of the business. So this was to a Chinese buyer, and they wanted to open thousands of stores in China, and me and Paul was going to continue looking after the world, but in a very much more stable way in terms of financial stability. And they were manufacturing, and it was a really amazing deal. And then I was in Germany just before COVID hit, and I was meeting with the team there, and we were talking. And one of the employees, she said, "I'm really worried about this virus. And you and me, Simon, have seen a couple of viruses over the years, and I'm a positive, healthy person." So I was like, let's just get some vitamins and get on with the deal. And of course, I went home and COVID happened, and they withdrew the deal. And the private equity at the time then didn't want to continue funding it, and they put us into administration. That's a very short version.
Yeah.
Of lots of moving parts. So that was incredibly challenging, because I started my business not to start in a massive global business. That became the roadmap and something that I created. But for me, it was never about money or about any of that. I just wanted to do what I love doing, and creating products was a real passion of mine. And as I evolved as a person, I became very interested in personal growth and personal development and health and well-being. So I incorporated a lot of the content into our products. So we kind of changed from really focusing on station and home office to much more content, which I now have taken into my new business Dream Life. But it was incredibly challenging, and it was really sad. But as entrepreneurs, we get knocked down a few times, and then we start up again. And I guess that's the silver lining here, is that retail is complex and wasn't really my real passion. My real passion is the products that I'm creating, or we were creating, to support people in all sorts of different ways. And I love my new business much more, actually.
Well,
Which is a good thing.
That's a good place to land, right?
It is.
So, let's talk about, one of the wisest things that people can do is build the army of people around them that take them through the highs and lows, right? And I know that obviously people helped you on the way up, but I know there are also really important people, when the deal fell through and the private equity company pulled funding. And I know you're a journaler, you like to capture your thoughts and, and bring thoughts to the surface by writing them down and things like that. But I'd love to kind of capture some of your observations or reflections on how important the small army, the intimate army of people are, that as a business owner, every business owner should put around themselves, and obviously they need to connect with you and be the right people for you. But I think there's often a small number of people that help you both on the way up and the way down. I'd really just love to get some of your observations about how important that mini network of critical people were to you in both directions, actually.
I had no idea about anything when I started. So I have always been a who versus what. So when I come up with a new idea or a new, even opening a new country, I would never just do it. I would always think, who has done this before? Who knows about this? And I still do this today in anything that I like to do, personally and in business. So over the years, mentors without doubt. I had amazing mentors from Craig Kimberley, who started Just Group, many years ago, Just Jeans, and he was an incredible mentor. The guy who started Body Shop here, Graham Wise, and Joe Horgan, Mecca. We started similar time. We've been incredible friends and business, I guess, mentors for each other over a long time. And I've been so privileged to be around so many amazing people. I also work with my life partner, which works really, really well. I know you do that as well, and that's been really amazing. But I think when you go through the challenging time is when things really become clear on who is there for you. And we actually went into administration twice, not just once, because we actually got picked up the second time and by a US business, and we did a deal over Zoom, and they were there for a year and then didn't trust that the government will open again. So if in time for Christmas, so they actually put it into administration, and that's when I decided to step out. But the amazing thing in our first administration was our board. So we created a really great board, and when we had private equity, we had to do it a bit more serious. But we actually started a board of kind of just mentors to start with, and that's really how we learned to go global. This is how we learned so many things. I had no idea about retail. I had no idea about anything really, and I learned it all from people before me. So when we had someone who wanted to open in Dubai, we were not ready to open in Dubai, but they kind of just really wanted it. So then I called Janine Ellis, Boost Juice founder. She's done lots of international deals, and she became a support person. So I feel like there's been so many people around me the whole journey, the good times and the bad times. But in the bad times, I think you go much smaller, as you said. And for me, that was really, there was, obviously Paul and I, but we supported each other. And I felt like when he was up, I was down, and the opposite. So we kind of always carried each other. But for me, number one was my best friends, because I could actually call about the same thing over and over and over again without her even questioning it. So
Yeah.
when you have a really good friend that doesn't really care about the business side, I mean, she cared about the business side, of course, but she wasn't a business associate as such. But also, I have had Marianne from T2. She's a very creative, very much a soft person. I took a lot of thoughts from her, because she's gone through a transition, a much better outcome than mine. She sold her business, but I took a lot of advice from her. I took a lot of advice from Joe Horgan, and Joe Horgan owns Mecca. It's a massive business now. And she just reminded me so much about the important things. She's like, a business is just a business. You've got an incredible family. You have functional kids, and you're loving life. And I think those things are really important. And also another friend that had a really impact on me was a friend who passed away a few years ago. He was also in retail, Denny Guest from who started Blue Illusion. He and I were in the same entrepreneurs group for many years and supported each other from many angles, and he passed away in cancer. And I'll never forget it, because I just thought he would do anything to be here to have my challenges. So I put him on my vision board, and I kept looking at him thinking he will do anything just to be here.
Yeah.
So, and also in COVID, it was a lot of complex challenges during that time, especially in retail when everything was closed, and it was just really difficult. But I kept thinking, it's just a store. I mean, a few stores, and it's just a business, and I'm healthy. I'm here. A lot of people couldn't see their parents that were dying, or friends, and stuck overseas. And I just felt even in the hardest of time, there is so much to be grateful for. And I think my mentality of always working on myself, becoming a better version of me every single year or every single day, has really helped me kind of really take this in a positive way, and learn from it, and then move forward really quickly.
And, it's a good reminder to business owners that, perspective is everything.
Yeah.
And contextual perspective is everything. Context gives everything meaning, right?
Absolutely.
So, gee, times are tough. Well, you're alive. If
Yeah.
your family's healthy, life
Yeah.
is pretty good. You live in you live in Australia.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful country, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And you've been doing what you love for a bunch
Yeah.
of years, and you're still
Yeah.
doing it. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's easy for entrepreneurs to get really bent out of shape
Yeah.
around what's actually happening around that they're not happy about. And it's a skill, and a skill worth developing, to keep that contextual perspective, like things are tracking along. And I wonder, you know, you've rattled off a few of the who's who of retail in Australia as people who are willing to help you. It's interesting. I feel like people are willing to help someone who is really keen to have a go at something, but also is happy to display vulnerability.
Yeah.
And you know, so you've rattled off a little bit of a who's who of Australian retail, particularly. And was it difficult to kind of have that vulnerability when you're talking to them, or is that it's just a part of you? Or I'm just
Yep.
interested in your views on that.
Yeah, but they're who of who, or however they say that in English, in
Yeah,
retail. But for me, they're friends. So I developed those friendship before then anyone knew they know, or maybe were not as well known.
yeah,
So for me, they're just humans, and really good friends that have been there for a very long time. So Janine was there. I actually saw Janine speak many years ago, and she became a mentor and then an investor. And Joe and I met at a Westfield, no, actually a Lend-Lease dinner or something like that. And we just always helped each other
yeah,
in through the journey. So I think it's more about, it's not just about the difficult times, it's about creating these networks through life. And I think, because I think I came to Australia with nothing. I had no network, and I didn't know anyone more than Paul. And so I kind of had to really work on that. And I feel like that's something that is worth investing. And I was also in part of EO for a long time. And I think it's a skill to be vulnerable, but I believe that if we work on ourselves and we know if you know yourself really well, and you did your very best, like I worked to the end. Like, I did not sleep the last 24 hours, because as an entrepreneur, that was the last thing that I ever wanted to go through, because I just didn't want to lose my business. Like, that was just, so I just kept going. And I surrounded myself there with people who are really supportive. And we also had an incredible chairman, Richard Forbes, who just was so helpful through this really difficult time. So I feel like I was so privileged, but it's just a skill that all of us can have if you're corporate
yeah.
or entrepreneur. But it's something that you can't really do that just for a hard time. I think you need to do that
Sure.
through, and I always been laughed at in terms of all of my personal development that I love, and it came really handy. And I think Paul dealt with the challenges in a very different way and took much longer. I decided really quickly not to go down with the business.
Right. So, you know, life potentially can be measured in wins, losses, and lessons. Now, losses and lessons are interchangeable, right? It's just perspective again.
Yeah.
And I'd be, you know, if young entrepreneurs are listening to this, right, and they're right at the start of the journey, I'd love to kind of capture, you know, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from winning, and then what's the biggest lesson you've learned that was triggered by a loss, and that might be more than one, but I'd love to capture the big lessons that have landed for you from winning in business, and also some of the losses that you've had.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with the positive ones.
Yeah.
But saying that, I feel like failure for me, and this is a quote by Ariana Huffington.
Yes.
Failure is not the opposite of success; it's a stepping stone to success.
Right.
So I truly believe that, and I mean, we were a success story for 20 years, and a lot of those successes came with failures behind them. So I feel like it's not about failure, it's about learning every single day. And if you don't take risks. I'm a big risk taker. I asked Paul to sell his house to open the first store, and I just knew that I will make it happen. I'm an entrepreneur. I know I'm a hard worker. I know I can make it happen. With the administration, it was a little bit out of my control because I signed my vote away when I got the last private equity involved. So it's a bit of a different story. But in terms of lessons, number one is to do something you're really passionate about. Like, there's no way I would have survived the hard first 5 years, because they're the hardest, in my opinion, to kind of establish a brand and a business and know if your concept's going to working. So if I wasn't absolutely loving it, there's no way I would have got through that. Number two is to set a really clear vision, especially in today's world, because the shiny object syndrome is real, because there's so many opportunities now, and it always has been, but I think even more now, because you can basically do so many collabs in such a different way compared to 20 years ago. So I think putting a really clear vision, we did that really early, and that helped us as founders and I guess the leadership team, but also our team, to know where we're going, especially when it was tough. And the third one is to really dream big, because most of us are so restricted on budgets and how many employees we have, capabilities, all the things that a business have. But if you dream big and ask yourself, excuse me, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Because most of us are scared of failure. So if you put that away, what would you do with your business and your life if you couldn't fail? What would you do if you had all the resources, the money, and the skills to do whatever you want? What would that be? And then if you had the health and the energy, because a lot of us are tired when you start a business, it's hard work. So if you had all the energy, what would you do? Because then you create a business that is not restricted of your current abilities or current kind of restrictions. You create a business that is possible if you then implement that in a good way and in a measured way. So I think passion, setting a really clear vision, and dreaming really big. And the last one of the most important ones, don't say no, say how. Because the reason why I believe a lot of small businesses fail, I don't know what the rate is, but it was really high in the
very high.
I started. Because you get so many no's. No one knows you. You get so many no's because you're trying to do something that hasn't been done before or hasn't been done that way before. You just get so many no's, and it's really hard to get no's. But if you don't take no for an answer and work around that, you always find a way. So we had that big on our wall in our office, and it was something we lived and breathed, and it was really annoying for most of our team. And it's really annoying because my kids now do that to me. Don't say no, say how. And I truly believe that's how small businesses or entrepreneurs that want to do incredible things really succeed. But don't say no, say how. Find a way.
Well, it's interesting, first of all, the summary on dream big, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do if you had all the resources you need to make it happen? I think the third thing is really interesting, and it is a reflection of your interest in health. What would you do if you had all the health and energy to make it work, right? Even in the very large corporate market, we're not thinking like that.
Yeah.
Don't say no, say how. There's so many, departmental kind of barriers between departments and things like that. You can't, finance say you can't do that. Operations say, well, we need it like this. And, the delivery team is saying sales are over promising. The marketplace sales are saying, well, give us something we can actually sell, and all this sort of stuff. So there's conflict all the way through the business. There's a lot of no, right? There's a lot of no, you can't, no, you can't, no, you can't, as opposed to how would we do that? How would we take that to market?
Yeah.
And so, get a great vision. A lot of very large companies have pretty poor vision setting.
Yeah.
It's like get some words, put them on the wall, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But it's infiltrated all the way through. So these aren't just small business lessons. These are lessons for everybody. And I want to go back a step, because you said, you're a bit of a risk taker. And I think you and I were chatting once before, and you were walking me through what is, in project management, it's called the difficult first task, right? So when you're running a complex, sometimes controversial project, there's often a difficult phase of that.
Yeah.
And, there's some project management thinking that you should just tackle that first,
Yeah.
because that'll determine if you're going to make it or not,
Yeah.
or have your way through it. And I remember you talking about, you're getting some advice and you're going to open more stores and you wanted to go national, and people saying, well, build Kikki K in your own state first, Kristina, where you control it. And that was not your response. You took on a difficult first task kind of methodology, right? I'm going
Yeah.
to go to a different state. Step me through that logic. It makes perfect sense when you say it out loud, but this is a part of that risk-taking willingness again,
Yeah.
right? To do the difficult thing and make sure that you can make that work. So just step me through that strategy, because it is strategic.
Yeah, and it comes back to that clear vision that we had become, we wanted to be a world-class business in every sense, and we wanted to have something Kikki K in every stylish life. That was our vision to start with. And I had clocks everywhere, or a whole wall of clocks with all the different time zones, because I wanted to think global when we started. And the thing with retail, it makes complete sense to open one state at a time in terms of economy and resources and all that. So I get all that. But because I was so clear on our vision, I thought, if we can't open in Sydney, and it was also an opportunity to open. This is so long back, but it was basically when Bondi Junction became a what they call a black label, the best
Yeah.
shopping centers of its kind at the time, and I want to be part of that. So I thought, if we can't make it in Sydney, we're not going to make it in London and Paris and New York and all those places that we had a vision to open. And we when I say I'm a risk taker, I do all the work behind that too. So we wouldn't just open a store and just wish for it. We do all the research. We were like, what will we have, what's if we do less than what we, if the turnover is $1 million, if we do 10%, 20%, 30%, where is the cutoff point to make sure that we actually are a really sustainable business. So when I say I'm a risk taker in terms of trying new things, but not so we lose the whole thing. And that's not why we obviously lost the whole thing, because I wasn't a big risk taker in the end for that way. But I think in the beginning, I felt like we were going to be a global business. We needed to open, and then we opened actually in New Zealand, and we opened in Singapore. It was a very different plan to what most retailers would do. But saying that, the one thing that really helped us doing that, which I think is worth talking about here, is that we systemized everything. So we started with, it was just me in the beginning, and then Paul, and then we had a team, and then we grew that team. And to be able to grow globally, we systemized every single thing. And when we made a mistake, we learned from it. So we didn't just be like, all right, well, that was a mistake, let's move on. It's like, how can we make sure that we never do that again? What kind of systems do we need to put into that? So there was a lot of work. It wasn't just let's just open a few fun places. It was a lot of work behind that to make sure that we didn't go under doing that.
What is it about Sweden? Because IKEA is a very systemized.
We like organization.
Yeah, right. So you can go into any IKEA store in the world and go to the boardroom, and there will be 13 manuals in there.
Yeah.
And that's how you must run an IKEA store, right? And there's no movement on that.
Yeah.
This is how that works, right? And look at that brand globally.
Yeah.
And you go to an IKEA store anywhere in the world, and it will be like an IKEA store that you had at home or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I often talk about, the three levels of the business: the mechanics of the business, the model, so the genius that you're taking to the market, and then the magic, which is the bit on top. And the mechanics, the systems, the mechanics of the business are boring to the business owner.
Yeah.
But they're completely calming to the customer.
Yeah.
Because if your mechanics are broken, then they can't rely on anything else. It's just that simple, and I'd like it to be more fun than that, but it's not. The mechanics are boring to the entrepreneur, but absolutely calming to the customer. It's a really, really big deal. I'd love to imagine you were talking to a young entrepreneur, I'm going to ask you to think about two things, two levels, right? And I'm going to ask you to imagine you're talking to a young entrepreneur and you want to share wisdom with them that they don't even realize they don't know.
Yeah.
We've all been young entrepreneurs, we've all become middle-aged and then older entrepreneurs, and at every level we think we kind of got it all pinned down. But
yeah,
with that energy of youth, maybe don't even know what they don't know. And then I'm going to ask you to, what would be the wisdom you share with them? Then I'm going to ask you to think about what would the wisdom you would want to share upwards, to industry leaders and community leaders, and that you would want them to think more about in terms of the world we're in today. Part of the reason we're in Antarctica together was, what are we doing with the planet, and what are we doing with climate and things like that. So firstly, you've got some young, and I know you help people, dream life. And so what does that mean? But you've got some young people that are enthusiastic and they're like sponges, but you just know there's something they don't even know they don't know. There's some wisdom. I'd love to kind of tap in on that, and then we'll go the reverse. What would you love to be able to say to people that are leading at a high level, but you'd like them to hear some things that you'd like to share with them? So let's talk about the young entrepreneurs. What's the wisdom of Kristina Karlsson that you'd like to share with them?
It's a really good to not know what you don't know in so many ways. Because if I look back now, if I knew what I had to go through those 20 plus year I was in my first business, if I knew that, I'll be like, I don't know if I can do that. Not knowing is a real good thing. Saying that though, learn from others. Like, I just think that learning from mentors and learning from people, like, yes, like compared to when I started, I had a lot of coffees, and I still do because I love that. But you can learn from podcasts, you can learn from your, programs like yours, Simon. You can learn from so many people. I read, I don't know how many books a week. I just read and read, and I learn. I feel like anything is possible. So it's good to not to know, but it's also really good to learn from people that do know. And so you don't have to know everything, but you need to know, what's your next step. And I would, even before that, but it was a good saying, because saying what should they know. So I felt like I needed to say that. But I would start with working out what you want to do in your life. And when you're young, you don't really know that. And what you know now and what you want now might change, but you would need to start somewhere. And this is for anyone listening. What do you want to do with your life? And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people live their dream life. And a dream life sounds a little bit maybe too good to be true or fluffy, but for me, it's about living a life that you choose to live. So I think the most important thing is to work out, what kind of life do you want to live? Like, I love working. I love business. I think it's easier to start a business than so many other things that people, find. People find that difficult to start a business, but there's a lot of simple things that I think is much easier to start a business than doing things like that. So we just learn, and I love it. And it's really important to me to do something that I love. And I think everyone should wake up in the morning and know why they're alive and know what they can offer to the world. And all of us can offer something. So even if you're young, you have some expertise, you have some passions, and you're willing to learn, and you have all the energy specifically. And most people, when they're young, don't have a family to feed, so they can work and really spend that time. But you can only do that if you love what you do. So I would say, start with dreaming. What would you do if you couldn't fail, if you had all the money and the resources and knowledge, and you actually didn't have to work for money, and you had to work every day? What would you choose to do? Because that gives a lot of indication, because we're also driven by, paying for our rent and food, which is fair enough. But if you took that away for a little bit, what would you actually spend doing? So I think life as a whole is much more important than just focusing on your career or business. You want to combine it. So in my new business, and in my new kind of rest of my life, I want to travel the world and work and do exciting things. And I can do that now. And I absolutely love it. And I think everyone should do that, because life is too short. Even if we get to live a long life, life is short, in my opinion. So I would start dreaming. I would just start thinking if anything is possible, and then work towards it. It's not gonna, it's not sometimes working out what you want to do is part of the journey, living your dream life. It's actually the process. And sometimes when you take the wrong turn, it's the blessing, because then you might end up with something else, and that's just fun. And we can do all these mistakes, and we can take different turns and reinvent ourselves anytime. It's up to you. So
And
that's for the young ones.
well, it's interesting because, I was going to ask questions about, ambition and courage and what fuels your ambition, but I think you've just actually laid that out, right? If you can't find the thing that actually has you bounce out of bed in the morning, if you've got to drag yourself out of bed in the morning, back to dreaming again, right? What would you do if you couldn't fail? What would you do if you had all the resources you need?
Yeah.
Particularly, what would you do if you had the drive and energy, the health and energy to really make that happen? I think the energy thing is pretty huge. And business becomes business so quickly, as do a lot of things, right? And everyone talks about find the thing you love, but it's easy to dismiss that. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you just have to start, because you can't possibly imagine where you were going to land.
No.
It's
and you never know. And I could never, ever have imagined, even though I was a big dreamer to start with, I could never have imagined all the things that I got to do, and all the experiences, and all the people that I got to meet. And it's just so amazing. But when you love what you do, it's also infectious. So you inspire other people around you to do what they love. And if everyone do what we love, I think we create this ripple effect of inspiration, and most people want to do good in the world. And once we establish a business that support our lifestyle and all the things we want to do, most of us want to then help others to do the same, or help courses, or whatever whatever our thing is. It could be the climate, but it could also be if we go through a challenge, sickness wise, then we often just feel like we want to then help people behind us. And I think that's the amazing thing that comes with wisdom, is when you learn so much and you feel like, I just want to share it. I just want to start, make it quicker for people based on the things that I learned that, I might have taken me a long time to learn, but now got it.
Yeah. So, it's interesting. I love musicians. I like watching them play. And, one of, my favorite bands, I mean, my favorite all-time performer was David Bowie, but, I love Coldplay. And, I can imagine as a group of young men at university, I'm pretty sure they didn't set a vision that they were going to rule the world of popular music like they do. But I suspect they had a vision that they'd want to spend their lives playing music. And they would never want to retire from that, which might be another kind of indicator for people. What would you want to spend your life doing and never retire from it? Because if you find that, you don't know where that's going to land if the right people come into your life.
Exactly.
And one of the things about planning, right? One of the things that makes planning so hard is, people want to set out the steps in the plan. The real key to planning is to realize you haven't yet met the people that will get you there. So if you want to spend your life playing music, and you'd never want to retire from it, and you'd want to get as big as you could possibly be doing that. The only barrier is you haven't yet met the people that can get you there, right? So you don't believe you could fail. You have the resources to do it. You've got the energy to do it. And I guess we add to that, you can find the people or attract the people to you that can help you get there. And then I think there's another question on top of that, which, once again, if I use Coldplay as an example, I don't know if they went through this thought process, but I'm guessing they did, because of how involved they are on environmental issues and doing good things. I suspect when you start to, when you really realize that's the thing, there's not so much how can you make a difference, but how can you be the difference
absolutely.
in what you're doing. I mean, lift people up every time they put out new music or play
Yeah.
they are actually the difference, you know. It's and you know, I'd love more businesses to ask that question, not how can we make a difference, but how can we be the difference
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
world by example and by what we take to market. What
Yeah.
if you had the opportunity? What if I had a captive audience of significant world leaders, business leaders, politicians, and others, and I brought them into a room, and we've given them, you know, we've waved a magic wand over them, and they're going to hang off every word you say and believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to share some wisdom with them based on your experience as a human in the world on some things you'd love them to think about as stewards, you know, of countries, communities, the planet. What kind of things would you love them to be thinking about differently and better than we feel like they might be right now?
You know, I don't know if there will say much difference to young people versus old people, because every stage is different in our life. We learn and we grow and we make mistakes and we learn from it, and then we start again or we continue or whatever we're doing. But dreaming will never stop, because if you are a person who really passionate about climate change, if you're a person who really passionate about healthcare, if you're a person really passionate about education, there are so many restrictions already around all that, and so much complexity. We saw that in Antarctica with climate change. It's not one road, right? And it's not an easy one, and everyone have a different opinion. So again, I would say, if we took all the barriers away, all the things that we are, you know, believed to have to function within the framework, and, you know, legal and structures and all those kind of things, if we took all that away and we start thinking, what will we do if we knew we couldn't fail? And if we had all the money and the resources and knowledge and all that, what would we do in your particular passion of change? So that could be the climate, the health, the education, whatever. I don't think that that's any change for if you're young or older or wiser, because with the wisdom comes more opportunity in terms of making things happen. And imagine then if you took away all the barriers, because I run workshops now to help business and private people to dream. And so many people come up with, well, I can't do that because that's how we do it. And I can't do this because I'm not capable enough, or I've never done this before, I don't know. So people don't actually say anything. If you go to a goal setting workshop, we often go and like, okay, well, we're gonna turn over a little bit more money in a business, or we're gonna reduce emission, whatever, climate, whatever. There are always things that we can measure. But that's just often just like a little step towards something that we think is possible. But if you remove that and just ask yourself, what would we do if we knew we couldn't fail? We might come up with ideas that are free. We might come up with ideas that we haven't even thought of. And I see these over and over when I do workshops for businesses, because a lot of employees actually don't want to say what they think is possible, because they don't think they are capable to do it. They don't have the knowledge. They know that they don't have the budget, and they certainly know that they don't have time to do it. So they don't say it. But then I'm like, let's not forget about time. Let's not forget about if we're going to make it happen or not. What will we do in this business if we knew we couldn't fail? And it just like simple things, like I got out, like someone said in my previous business, when lunch is on, it's too busy, so I waste 20 minutes on my lunch break because we only have two microwaves, not microphones. And I was like, oh, that's an easy fix. Let's just put that on the list and fix it. So simple, but really got that person productivity up so she can have a proper lunch break, so she can work more. And that would never have come in a goal setting. Also we had people saying, let's do a collaboration with them, and be like, oh no, but we're too small. Yeah, but if we can dream, like I want to do a collaboration with Ariana Huffington. She felt like, God to me when I started out. And I read her business and I was like, I love everything she stands for. So I just contacted her and said, hey, I want to do a collaboration with the journal. And we did.
Yeah.
And I didn't know her. And I was just brave to ask. And I was brave to even write it down. And I think that's the thing. Like, I didn't know anything about retail. I didn't know anything about business, but I dreamt big. And if you can dream it, you can do it. And that's a bit of a bit of a quote. And I just want to say one more thing in all this is, you just have to start. You don't have to know the whole staircase. You just have to take this first step. And I think it's a Zig Ziglar quote that I really, truly live by. And that is, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. And if you just start with your first step, it opens up so many thoughts, ideas, learnings, and then you take the next one. And then you might meet someone who takes you the elevator up. You never know. And yeah, anyway, so I think the dreaming is so powerful, and a lot of leaders don't want to hear it because they think it's like unrealistic, but it's basically just taking barriers away.
Yeah, that process. What if we couldn't fail? Imagine, a number of leaders responsible for remote, Indigenous communities, health, law enforcement, education, right? If they, as an example, if they were sitting around thinking, well, how do we be the difference for those communities? And if we knew we couldn't fail, what would we really go for?
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
And then if we knew we could resource it, how would we go for it? And we had the energy for it, but we are compromised by how's this going to play out in re-election? How's this going to play out in, budgets and all? It's really a limiting strategy. Kristina, we could talk about this all day, but I've got a series of quick questions. I'm not going to ask all of them, but just for people to find out a little bit more about what's going on in your mind, and just some, like the first thing that pops into your mind as you respond to it. So if I could click my fingers and you could instantly master any skill at all, what would you want to be able to do at a highly skilled level without practice, without needing to practice to do it?
Oh, so many things. I'm going to say two.
Okay.
I want to be really, really good at marketing, and I want to be a really, really good speaker, and I want to be really, really good at health and well-being, so I can help people stay really healthy. Sorry.
Fantastic. That was three, but I'll let you have them. If you
I'm
could,
an entrepreneur. I break the rules, right?
if you could travel to any period in history just to kind of watch and observe and learn from it, what period would that be, and why would you pick that?
Oh, that is a hard one because I want to be part of it all. But I think from the beginning, I would love to see how it all started, to see if and why is to see if we can make more sense why we're here.
Right. Do you mean the start of civilization or the start of the?
Well, yeah. Start with.
Yeah. Okay. So the seat of civilization and how that all. That's super interesting. If you could sit in the room of any major negotiation that the world's gone through in the past, so you're actually in the room watching the debate and the negotiation, what would that negotiation be? What would that issue be that people were negotiating and resolving?
Oh my gosh, these are not easy questions.
No, this is kind of inside the mind.
Oh, this is not what I want to say, but what first came to mind, I would love to know what happened behind the scenes with COVID, because there's something that I don't know. So that would be one. But do you know what? Gosh, I think I would love to have spent time with Nelson Mandela, because what he went through, I would love to understand how, because I felt like that was the way he turned his life around was remarkable. And then I also would love to have understood the guy who wrote the book, who was in concentration. I can't think of his name now.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, three answers.
Viktor Frankl. Frankl, yeah.
Yeah. So all those, in terms of understanding their mind, how they coped with the
Yeah.
incredible, and how they can be so positive, because that's one thing that I have been really trying hard to do in the hardest of times, and that's nothing compared to what they went through.
Yeah, and I'm with you on Nelson Mandela, because he, particularly when he became president, right, and the negotiations he had to undertake to bring the country together,
Yeah.
out of everything that had happened, were extraordinary. Kristina, I really want to thank you for giving us this time. I want to thank everybody that has stayed with us right through the course of this episode, and picked up on your energy levels and your enthusiasm for what you're doing and the lessons behind it, and the wisdom shared. And I'd like to lay a challenge down, really, to anyone that's watched this episode, to really think about the dream. How big are you dreaming? Lean in on the things that Kristina teaches. And then that pattern of, you've got to set a vision, but really, what would you do if you couldn't fail? What would you do if you had all the resources you needed? What would you do if you had the energy to pull it off? And who is it you'd need to meet to actually be the difference? Not just make the difference, but actually be the difference. And Kristina, thank you so much for giving us this time to be able to unpack this a bit further with you.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate, and I loved this conversation. And as you said, we can go on forever, so we'll have to do it again. Thank you.
We could, so we've got to be disciplined here. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.